Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Focus on Education series. So in tonight's session, we'll be looking at the various primary teaching options available in Mary Immaculate College. So namely, we'll be looking at the Bachelor of Education, the Bachelor of Education International, and the B.Ed in Education and Psychology. And our speakers this evening will be Drs. John O'Shea, Dr. Sarah O'Brien, and Dr. Claire Griffin. So please remember, if you do have any questions, use the question and answer facility. Just type in your questions and we'll try to get to them all at the end of the session. So I'll now hand you over to Dr. John O'Shea, who will begin the presentation on the Bachelor of Education.
Good evening, everybody, and we're delighted that you're interested in the education programs at Mary Immaculate College, specifically the undergraduate teacher education programs. I wanted to very briefly discuss the content of the Bachelor of Education and maybe hit on some of the queries that you might have regarding studying the program. So our first slide looks at the, might skip on to the, yes, thanks. The first slide looks at the 4 years of the program and the type of activities that you can expect to encounter, the type of learning at third level, the type of study and engagement you can expect to have with us. So in the middle of the screen there, you'll see 4 themes, and they're the 4 years of the program: learner, teacher, researcher, and leader. And I suppose from the start, people are often reticent to go from one side of the desk to the other side of the desk, and that's the goal at the early part of the program, to prepare you for making that move from, as I said, from one side of the desk to the other, because school placement, for example, is an integral part of the program, and you get a vast amount of experience in schools from year 1 to year 4. But in year 1, you can expect many courses that prepare you to begin to teach in year 1. So, for example, you can expect to experience many of the curricular subjects that obviously a primary school teacher is responsible for teaching. As you know, a primary school teacher teaches every subject area: English, Irish, Math, History, Geography, Science, PE, SPHE, and so on. So you will be you will experience the teaching of those subjects. So it's not your understanding of the actual subject, it's the methodology, the approaches to engage students in the subject area. So it's the teaching of the subjects that you explore with us. Together with a variety of other courses that I'll discuss in a minute, but primarily it's probably what you're thinking about right now, preparing to teach. Many of the courses, particularly in year 1, are focusing on helping students begin to understand the teaching of subjects at primary level. And as you move then to year 4, more and more time is spent both on school placement, but on further choice within the program for yourself as a student at third level. So, for example, built into the program from year 2 onwards, there's the opportunity to study a module from the Faculty of Arts, a liberal arts module such as Maths, Irish, Geography, History, and so on. And that's your own that's your own choice in the program, but it also is there for you to develop and to understand a subject at third level outside of the teaching of different subjects. So that option is there for you, together with the option to research and to question and perhaps select a specialism of your choice, should you wish to do that. So we have a wide variety available, and I'll discuss those in a minute. So there's a lot of choice within the program to cater to your interests, to cater to your talents, and outside of the core, which everyone does also, which finally leads up to the final year of the program, which the first semester of which is spent in schools, and it's spent in schools probably in your locality where you choose to go to yourself, probably in the school that you went to yourself at primary level, from September right the way through to Christmas. And it's the culmination of school placement, formerly known as teaching practice. And it is one of the semesters where it is the only semester where, for example, you spend all of the time on school placement away from campus probably in your local school, but that's not to say there isn't school placement in other elements or in other years of the program. There is. It's across the program in all years. So around that screen there, you see the type of learning that you will engage in across the program, the type of modules that you will study, and also it is very different to learning at second level, and there's a careful introduction to that also. I suppose in first year there's a module that we focus on, and which is life as a beginning undergraduate as a student teacher, and it's to enable an effective transition from second level to third level. So on the next slide, then it gives you an idea of the type of modules you can expect to study in first year, for example. So although our first years this year have engaged with us remotely, they've engaged with modules that they would have engaged with even if they were on campus. So on the screen, you see the type of modules you'll explore: technology and education methodology. One of the first ones there up the top of the screen, that is the type of resources, the types of activities, what's required in terms of classroom management, what's required in terms of asking a good question, structuring a good explanation, and so on. So it's the technology that's available for schools today, and the technology that's used in schools today, exploring all of that together with the management side of things in terms of managing a classroom environment. And then you've got three modules there in the middle of the screen that probably are familiar to everybody and that you can remember engaging with in primary school, and that's Irish, English, and mathematics. So the teaching of the three subject areas. So you can expect to study those across the program, across all years, indeed, as their core modules in the curriculum. In the middle of the screen there, you see becoming a student teacher, and that module is there to, as I said a minute ago, to induct you into third level life at third level, study skills, for example, writing skills, basic research skills that are required of a third level student and that are explored in that module. So it's to help that transition from second level to third level. Also, we're very in the Irish context, and not every jurisdiction is like this, but in the Irish context, a great deal of emphasis is placed upon psychology, sociology, philosophy, and history, where we've come from, why we do what we do in education, our history, our past, and that's also explored across the program in a variety of different type of modules. And it's one of the cornerstones of preparing a primary student, preparing a teacher to be a primary teacher in Ireland. And so therefore you'll explore all of that in across all years of the program. And finally there on that screen you see placement. So placement, as I said, happens across the program, across all years, in first year, in second year, and in third and fourth year, to different degrees. So a couple of weeks in first year, building up in second year to 6, a different experience, an alternative experience in third year, and a final placement in fourth year, which, as I said earlier, spans the complete semester from September right the way through to Christmas. Moving on there then to the next slide, this looks at, I suppose this is a slide that indicates the busyness of the program because it's a professional qualification. Immediately upon graduation, you're entitled to be employed in a primary school setting in Ireland and indeed beyond in certain jurisdictions. So we'd have many graduates that would travel, for example, to the Emirates, across into the UK, and in a variety of European schools, and immediately they can be employed in those areas. But because it's a professional qualification, it's a busy program, and you can see there's 55 modules, roughly, give or take, over the course of the 4 years, between placement and lectures and project work and so on. And there is choice within the program, as I said earlier, particular to the B.Ed program in Merrimack College, a wide choice, and those possibilities I'll discuss now in the next slide. So these are the possibilities, and these are not an exhausted by any means, and it's not an exhaustive list that you see on screen here. If you have a particular talent or interest in a subject in either education or the liberal arts, it's possible for you to study those in addition to what you would normally engage in to get your qualification. And everybody does this, so it's not an option, but it's built into the program so that when you graduate and you enter the jobs market in a number of years' time, you have a degree that is different and that has been tailored to your particular interest. So, for example, many students would be interested in the provision of SEN and furthering their knowledge of SEN in early childhood studies and drama, PE, music, and so on from the education perspective. And those options are there. You pick one and you explore that. But also others, may be interested in, might be enjoying maths at the moment at second level, or English, or Gaeilge, or geography, or history, and would like to have further understanding of those subject areas to third level at a third level degree program. So that those options are there for you to explore those as interests as well. So there are there's a choice built into the program so that that any particular talents or interests that you might have currently can be further developed within the framework of also becoming a primary school teacher. So I'm happy to answer questions on that in a little while. Our next slide then looks at the school placement and how much school placement there is over the course of the program. So 24 weeks over 4 years. And as I said, from beginning in first year right the way through to year 4, engage in all types of school activities, teaching obviously, but observation is really important, engaging with the school community at all different types, in all different types of situations, such as participating in the provision of SEN in the school, participating of different types of classroom activities and beyond. Observing school life is important, and immersing yourself within the school community at all stages to really understand the role of the primary school teacher. So you'll engage in observation and classroom-based teaching and whole school teaching and learning activities at all levels, from junior infants right the way through to the 5th and 6th classes. So, by the time you graduate, we're confident that you will be a very capable primary school teacher at whatever level you get your first position in. So that brings me on then to our next slide, which focuses on, I just want to mention it focuses on the international element that is within the B.Ed program. And sorry, Martin, it's fine. There is the opportunity to go abroad in the program if you wish. In the B.Ed program, in third year, you don't have to go abroad, but there is the opportunity to study abroad. And happy to answer questions on that in a little while also. So, Gaurav Milamahagis Ila, apologies, I ran over a little bit over my time, but I want to pass you over now to my colleague, Dr. Sarah O'Brien, who's going to discuss the B.Ed International program.
Great. Thanks very much, Dr. O'Shea. And just to say hello to everybody and to acknowledge the difficult circumstances we're all finding ourselves in at the moment. Nonetheless, it's really nice to be able to connect with you, and we're very pleased that you're considering Mary Immaculate College as a future option. And I guess my job is to talk you through this new degree program that we have been offering for the last year, which is the Bachelor of Education International. So in many ways, everything that Dr. O'Shea has just explained to you also stands for the Bachelor of Education International. So it is a teaching qualification. Martin, you could go to the next slide, please. So like the B.Ed, it is a level 8 degree program that provides professional qualification in primary teaching. And what's different then about why we call it the B.Ed International is that it also provides academic specialization in international and comparative education. So really what differentiates the programs is that B.Ed International students have a mandatory study abroad experience in third year, in the first semester of third year. So we're really emphasizing the importance of going out, going to a different university, either in Europe or in the US or Australia, and really developing your curiosity around how education is approached in very different contexts to Ireland. As well as that, the academic specializations you will be taking will be in the area of international teacher education. So what we tend to see in the students who signed up for the B.Ed International this year is real curiosity around linguistic diversity, around cultural diversity, real curiosity about spending time with different students in contexts outside of the Irish third level college. And also, I think I've recognized in these students a sort of a real desire to be able to respond to the needs of students from diverse backgrounds within the Irish education context. So for teachers even who are happy to stay and teach in Ireland, there's an understanding of how culturally and linguistically diverse our classrooms are now, and a recognition that the Bachelor of Education International prepares them, gives them special skills to deal in a responsive way with very different cohorts of students in their classrooms. So you could go on to the next slide there, Martin. So like Dr. O'Shea explained, the program or the conceptual framework for the B.Ed International is very similar to the B.Ed and B.Ed in Psychology. So there's an emphasis on the student as a learner, as a teacher, as a researcher, and a leader. However, we do thread this idea of international education throughout the program. So in first year, we have monthly lectures from guest speakers from all around the world. And these take the form of Friday talks. They're currently online, but hopefully they will be live in the future. And so we've had educators from the US, from Mexico, from Brazil. We'll have researchers from Greece, from all parts of the world who talk to us about how education is approached in their very different settings. So from the very beginning, you're going to be comparing the way we do education in Ireland versus the way it's done in very different contexts. In year 3, you begin to see substantial differentiation in the program, because that's when your study abroad begins. So that first semester of year 3, we will have support to do in year 2 in picking out the right study abroad experience for you. We have almost 100 different destinations that you can choose from when you're thinking about your study abroad. There are 32 universities in the US, in North America, that can facilitate your study abroad. We have 60 partnership universities in Europe where you can also think about studying abroad. And there are partnerships as well in China and Argentina and Brazil and lots of very exotic places. So you're not short in choices. And we have a designated international office in Mary Immaculate College, and they're constantly updating their partnerships and adding to them. So this is a really dynamic sort of part of this program, because we're lucky to have extensive relationships with international universities. So study abroad, often students will ask, well, what does that actually mean? Essentially, it allows you to go abroad and to take modules that resemble the kind of modules that you would be taking if you were staying in Ireland for third year. So we match up modules that will continue on to develop your professional education as a primary school teacher, but you'll be taking those modules with other students in international contexts. Then you will have some different modules as well to take in year 3 and year 4 that are different to the B.Ed and the B.Ed Psychology. So they include specializations in comparative education. You'll be doing a special portfolio module that really speaks to your international experience. And your dissertation, which happens in 4th year, will also be in the area of comparative and international education. That's the part where you really get to display the skills and the sort of the comparative lenses that you have developed when looking at Irish education versus international education. So you can move on there again, Martin, please. Okay, so what does the B.Ed International class cohort look like? Well, it's a small group. The numbers, the available numbers are not large, and so this is quite a bespoke program. We currently have about 15 students. Like I say, these students they're particularly curious about studying, about languages, about meeting the needs of diverse learners. So they have an interest in education in international settings. Inevitably, many of them are really interested in teaching abroad after their 4 years of study, right? So we'll be talking to them a lot about potential opportunities to go to places like the UK or Dubai or Australia to teach there. But I wouldn't say it's exclusively that. It's also about, like I say, meeting the needs of international students in Irish contexts as well. So the lectures, many of your lectures would be shared with B.Ed and B.Ed psychology students, especially in first year and second year, and third year and fourth year, that starts to change a little bit. So it's a small group. They tend to be, you know, at the moment, we have our first cohort, so they're a close-knit group, and we encourage that, but we also really encourage learning from you know, peers in the B.Ed psychology program, the early childhood program, and so on, and from arts-based modules as well. So could you go on there again, Martin, please? Great. So this is similar to the slide that Dr. O'Shea showed earlier. So these are the modules that B.Ed International students are taking right now, and they're sharing those modules with mainstream B.Ed students. However, we also, and I just mentioned this, have a monthly lecture series for B.Ed International students. I can show you what they look like on the next slide. So these are some of the guest speakers that we've had so far. So we've had Dr. Wilmer Chavarria he's a Nicaraguan educator based in the US. He's in Harvard School of Education. We've had two professors from Brazil talking to us about storybooks that represent minority experiences in Brazil. This one, we've got a great speaker from Mexico who's going to be talking about how education contexts in Mexico are really trying to promote native languages. So as you might know, Mexico has a huge variety of native languages as well as Spanish and many English speakers. So we're going to be looking at how we can actually support native languages in the classroom, which I think is something that we're really concerned with in Ireland at the moment. We'll also, have that speaker from Trinity College Dublin in March, and so it goes on. So every year there'll be those sort of opportunities for B.Ed International students to really meet an expert and to engage with them at informal and very friendly levels, and hopefully too that inspires you to think about the sort of study abroad experiences that you would like in the future. So the next slide there, please, Martin. So just as a reminder, the modules that are specific to the B.Ed International include that study abroad experience. So that's a whole semester that you would be abroad. There are a couple of modules that are also distinct to the B.Ed International. They're Comparative Education 1, Comparative Education 2, the International Education Portfolio, and your dissertation. As well as that, there's an alternative education experience at the end of year 3. And during that experience, you will have the opportunity to go abroad and study. So we would again help you with getting a placement that would, rather than studying in a university, that may entail, teaching in an international context. And we're developing partnerships again with international schools, so as to kind of broaden those opportunities out to you. And next slide, please. Okay. So what are the opportunities for the B.Ed International? Well, first of all, we'd like you to be much more knowledgeable about teaching in global contexts. We'd like this program to offer you expertise in linguistically and culturally responsive education, which, as we all know, is becoming, much more to the fore of our consciousness in educational context. We're really eager for you to foster relationships with international communities of teachers, scholars, and educational settings. And that's really why we have those monthly talks from first year, because we want to be getting you in contact with people that might just be really difficult for you to find if we were left to our own devices. We want you to be able to compare educational policies across international contexts. So, we're all about questioning our methods. I think that's the great thing about third level education in general. You don't really accept received wisdom anymore. You begin to research and rethink about it and look at it from different perspectives. So we really hope that looking at education from international context will make you reevaluate maybe some of the ways that we teach in Ireland. And of course, we want to improve your multilingual and multicultural awareness as well through this program. So really, this is about preparing you to be citizens of the world, and to be more responsive teachers, and to develop that sort of nuance and awareness around culture that we're all just now getting our heads around. So I think that's everything from me. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and I'm happy to field those. But for now, I'm pleased to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Claire Griffin, who's going to be talking about the B.Ed in psychology.
Thanks a million, Sarah. Thank you. You're all very welcome, and it's great to have so many people engaged here online this evening. As Sarah said, my name is Dr. Claire Griffin. I am Programme Leader on the Bachelor of Education in Education and Psychology programme. Small bit of a mouthful, so we generally call it the B.Ed Psych programme. I lecture in Educational and Developmental Psychology, and as a point of information, I was originally a student on the B.Ed Psychology programme many years ago, and I've now come full circle to come back as an educational psychologist working on the programme. So I'm delighted to talk to you about this programme this evening and to give you an overview. So I will give you an overview now, and then we will take some questions afterwards. So moving on to our first slide. What is the B.Ed Psychology programme? Well, it's a dual honours degree programme, which means that when you complete the programme, you will finish with 2 degrees. And this makes this programme extremely unique in the Irish context, where you have a professional qualification in primary teaching, which is approved by the Teaching Council of Ireland. But you also then have a level 8 academic qualification in psychology, which is accredited by the Psychological Society of Ireland. So this makes the programme extremely appealing for students, because not only do you finish with your primary school teaching degree, which, akin to what Dr. John O'Shea just talked about, you finish your 4 years and you're qualified to teach at all levels across the primary school curriculum. But also in this scenario, you finish with an academic qualification in psychology, which means you then have the choice to go on and to study psychology at postgraduate level, should you so wish. And that academic qualification in psychology is comparable to getting an academic qualification in psychology in any other institution in Ireland. So if you think of any other colleges on the CAO form that would offer you a level 8 degree in psychology, that is comparable to what you will finish with on the B.Ed Psychology programme. So it's a very appealing, unique programme, and as I say, you have both qualifications at the end of it. So moving on, we see that the conceptual framework of the B.Ed Psychology programme, that middle section of the slide there, will look familiar to you from both the B.Ed programme and the B.Ed International programme, where across each of the 4 years we move through the conceptual framework of the student as learner, teacher, researcher and leader. But you'll also see those words coming in on the screen which are around it, and they are the psychology modules that you will study across the 4 years of the programme. So you'll see each semester you will be taking a number of Bachelor of Education modules, but you'll also be taking a number of psychology modules, and that continues across the programme. And towards the latter end of the programme, so nearing mainly year 4, the weighting of your psychology gets a lot heavier, so you're doing a lot more psychology modules towards the end of the programme. And you'll also see that you'll be doing a dissertation in psychology, and I'll talk to you more about that in a minute. But as you can see, it is a busy programme, but a lot of our students on the programme would say that it's a busy and it's a challenging programme, but it's also a very doable programme because you're supported as you go through the programme, and we ensure that yes, you can achieve the dual degree at the end of the 4 years, and our retention rate of students on the programme is extremely high. So students that commence the programme in first year, almost 100% of them will continue through to year 4 of the programme. So we look after our students and we ensure that there is a close-knit group that you work through and that you have that support both on your B.Ed modules and on your psychology modules. So moving on then, We see we've approximately 40 students per year group, and generally the kind of students who come onto the B.Ed Psychology programme are those who have an interest in psychology. So they may have an interest in behaviour, or how people learn, or how people think, or cognition. So they may have some interest in that area, but they also have an interest in education. So they may be students who potentially have always wanted to do primary school teaching, but maybe are saying, yeah, I'd love to do primary school teaching, but I also really have an interest in psychology. So this would give me the added benefit of putting both degrees together. And then you have students who have an interest in both. They may not have always wanted to have been a primary school teacher, but they have an interest in education. But also you have students who, you know, come in with an open mind to both. And I think it's really important to emphasize that this program isn't just geared towards students who long term want to become educational psychologists. Yes, it is really appealing for students who have that in their mind, because it joins both areas of psychology and education. But as I say, the degree in psychology is comparable to a degree that you would do in any other institution in Ireland. So as a result, you're not just studying educational psychology, you're studying all the different domains of psychology, like social psychology, health, cognitive psychology, etc., etc. So you have all that broad range of psychology, which means that as you come through the programme and towards the end of the programme, some students finish the programme with a real interest in staying with education and working as a primary school teacher, while others have an interest, or more of an interest, in going towards the route of psychology, and then others have an interest in combining both. So in terms of your lectures, you're sharing your lectures with B.Ed students as well as the B.Ed International students, and then your psychology modules, you're sharing them with your BA psychology students. So in Mary Immaculate College, as part of the arts programme, we also have a Bachelor of Arts psychology stream, and so you will be joining that cohort for some of your psychology modules as well. And then there's also class-based lectures, so you would be doing some of your modules in just that group of 40. So it allows you that opportunity to mix with your B.Ed colleagues, with your BA psychology colleagues, as well as to have that kind of safer, smaller, home-based classroom feeling with your other 40 students in your year group. So moving on, we see then, what does a semester look like? And both of my colleagues, Dr. John O'Shea and Dr. Sarah O'Brien, have just shown you what their semesters might look like. So this first semester will look comparable to what Dr. John O'Shea just showed you, with all of the modules, and those ones in the kind of the pinky colour, they're your B.Ed modules. They're on the Bachelor of Education. And then you see the blue boxes, they're your psychology, your arts psychology. So you have your introduction to psychology and you have your research methodology 1. It's important to know that in terms of the B.Ed modules, you don't do exactly the same programme as the B.Ed students, because in light of the busyness of the programme and in combining the 2 degrees, there are some modules that you don't cover, and then there are other modules that we cover on the B.Ed psychology programme that aren't covered on the B.Ed programme, for example. So like if you take that module, the last education module there, called Psychology of Learning and Development, that's a module that our B.Ed psychology students do, and we have a comparable module for the B.Eds, but it's slightly different in nature and in content. But we have ensured that the Teaching Council of Ireland have fully approved and accredited the Bachelor of Education component of the programme. So although there are slight differences, you still end up finishing your 4 years with that qualification that is approved and accredited by the Teaching Council of Ireland. And the same way the psychology programme is accredited by the Psychological Society of Ireland. So moving on then, we see that the structure of the programme, you've roughly 58 units of study, so busy with placement, lectures, projects and an undergraduate dissertation in psychology, many modules varying between education, psychology and research methodologies. And you also, in your final year, final semester, you do an elective in psychology, and you get a choice in what you choose. The kind of choices we have are areas like abnormal psychology, health psychology, the psychology of motivation, dissertation, and from year to year we often bring in different electives as well. So it gives you that small element of choice towards the end of your programme to study a specific area of psychology that interests you. Moving on, we also see that in your final year you undertake an undergraduate dissertation in psychology. So this is your final dissertation. You plan this in your third year of your programme, and then in the final year, final semester, you're actually undertaking this. So we supervise students in groups, and to do this undergraduate dissertation in psychology, you can choose whatever area of psychology interests you. So some students may, have gone through their program and have been really interested in a certain area of cognitive psychology, how students or how individuals might retain information, looking at maybe working memory or short-term or long-term memory. You might have other students who are really interested in sports psychology, maybe how you react in a sports team versus how you react on your own. Or other students might have very much interest in, let's say, health psychology. So maybe how we respond to stressors, or how our blood pressure might raise in a certain scenario. And then others might have interest in developmental or educational psychology. So looking at applying psychology, let's say, in the classroom. So there's a huge variety of choice that you can choose for your undergraduate dissertation, and students spend a lot of time deciding what they want to research because it's up to you, and you have access to a lot of psychology equipment as well. You can see them listed there, like the eye tracker, the SuperLab software, blood pressure monitors, camcorders, etc. So some students come up with really innovative studies which help to progress research that's been done in that area already. And you have lots of access then to supportive clinics in the area of statistical and qualitative data analysis. And I'm really pleased to say that our students who undertake the B.Ed Psychology programme have presented their research nationally and some even internationally, such as at the Psychological Society of Ireland All-Ireland Student Congress, at the annual All-Ireland Conference of Undergraduate Research, and at our own conference that we run annually in Mary Immaculate College, which we call PsychFest. So this gives students the opportunity to showcase the research that they've been undertaking to a national audience, and sometimes, as I say, an international audience. And this is a really positive way of getting feedback. So moving on, we see what's the structure of the programme and what does it look like? Well, akin to the B.Ed programme, there's approximately 24 weeks of placement over your 4 years where you engage in observation, teaching, and you participate in school life. You'll engage in 2 sets of 2 weeks of Gaeltacht placement, and you'll also engage in applied placement. So this is a 2-week period that occurs in the 3rd year of your programme, and this gives students the opportunity to apply their knowledge of psychology to an educational environment other than a mainstream setting. So we often have students going to special schools, to special classes, such as classes to cater for children with autism, or visual impairment, for example. They may decide to go to, let's say, a hospital setting of education, and there's lots of diverse opportunities for students. So this gives you an opportunity to look at psychology in an educational setting that's different really to what you would have done in the past, different to the mainstream setting, different to what we may have experienced as students ourselves. So moving on then, I think it's really important to highlight the quality and the success and achievements of the students that partake on our programmes. And this slide and the next slide, you're going to see a range of awards that students on our programme have been certified with over recent years. So you see that PSI is the Psychological Society of Ireland, and that congress that students present their undergraduate research at, you can see that we as a college have been the winner of the top prizes across the last 3 years and then a lot of years prior to that, and a huge amount of students have been highly commended at that conference as well. We have every year at the annual conference, so this is a conference for practicing psychologists and researchers in the field. We have a student symposium at that every year from our final year B.Ed Psychology cohort. And it's quite difficult to be accepted into that conference, but every year since 2014, we've had a group of students present at it due to the quality of the research that they undertake at undergraduate level. We've also had a number of students over recent years getting a global award. So this is an international award in the psychology and education categories. So this is where they submit a piece of their coursework, an essay, for example, that they would have written in the final year or the third year of their program. And we've had one student who won the overall international prize in the teacher education section. So you really see that the students that come onto our program are high achieving students, but they also go on to continue to really showcase their learning and their success at an international and national level. You can see as well there at that special education conference, we had a student who won the Best Poster Award in 2019. So a number of our students went and presented at that conference. So you're getting that sense of not only are the students learning and showcasing their work within the college community, but over the 4 years of their program, they're really encouraged to showcase their work, you know, outside of the college community too, so that they're highlighting the strength of their work and their research. And you see there, if you look down, the number of students with college-based awards, and we've had students who then go on with their undergraduate research to publish it in peer-reviewed journals, and that's quite a lengthy, difficult process for not just for students, but for academics in the field. So it's a really big achievement for our graduates of the program to go on and do that. And actually we have a current student at the moment who's still at undergraduate level who has recently just had her article published, which was based on an essay that she wrote for a module. So you see a lot of success on the program and a lot of publications in more practitioner based magazines. If we move on then, Martin, if you don't mind, to the final slide really, which looks at what can you do with your qualification when you finish. So I've emphasised quite strongly the idea that it is a dual degree programme. You have one degree, which is your education or your primary school teaching degree, and then you have the other degree, which is your general level 8 psychology degree, which gives you the opportunity to study in any field of psychology. So looking at the education side, we can see many of our graduates go on to work as primary school teachers, but either mainstream or special education. And some of them then go on to do further postgraduate studies in education, which can lead to careers in leadership, such as principal, vice principal, or B posts or A posts within schools. Or they may do further work with education support services like the PTST or the NCSE. And some of them that actually are engaging in third level lecturing both at Mary Immaculate College and in other institutions in Ireland. We have some students who would have done postgraduate studies in the area of play therapy, for example, and they're engaging in work in that area, often on a part-time basis or on a full-time. In terms of psychology, for any level 8 degree in Ireland that you take in psychology, you can't just walk into a job in psychology. That doesn't happen. You have to go on and do postgraduate studies. So some of our students go on and choose to do postgraduate studies across a range of different areas. And these are just some of the examples of areas that our students have gone to. So educational, developmental, neuropsychology, health, sports psychology, and others have gone on after they've done postgraduate studies in those areas to have careers at third level lecturing level, in research or in applied practice in those areas. And as I say, by combining your education and psychology, some of our graduates would go on then to study the doctorate in educational psychology, which we have at Mary Immaculate College. It's a 3-year full-time doctorate in educational psychology. But it's important to note that you can't just walk in from the B.Ed psychology programme into the doctorate programme in educational psychology, because in any of the third level programs in educational psychology, you must gain experience in advance. So many of our students would go on and work as a primary school teacher for a number of years and gain experience on the ground, and then return to Mary Immaculate College or another institution to study either educational psychology or a different field of psychology at postgraduate level. So as you can see, the course gives huge options and choice when you come to the end of it, but as I say, it also gives you that choice to work as a primary school teacher, akin to the two other programmes that my colleagues, Dr. John O'Shea and Dr. Sarah O'Brien, have just talked to you about. So it's a really positive programme, and I'd be delighted to take questions on it when we now move to this question and answer session. So thanks, Martin, for that.
Okay, thanks very much, Claire.
Yes.
So thanks to all our speakers, to Claire, to Sarah, and to John. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A facility and type them in. We'll try to get through them all over the course of the next half an hour or so. So first question in, I might just put this to John first. So John, if you could look into your crystal ball here, we have a question from someone who wants to know, do you think the points will go up or down for primary teaching in 2021?
That's a good question, Patrick, and we're always asked that question. Sorry, it is hard to know. Okay, normally in normal times they don't. They go up or down 5 or 10. It depends on demand, and it depends on the level of interest. But they have remained around where they are, and currently, Pat, you might know the exact number for this year. They have remained at that for the last number of years, but they go up or down about 5. But that's as far as I know. That's as much as we could tell you anyway at this point.
Yeah, thanks very much, John. Yeah, I suppose it's just very difficult to predict it. Like John said, it just really depends on how many people are interested in it, and we'll have the same number of places available anyway. So next question, we might put this to John as well. This person wants to know, John, what modules should I choose if I'm doing arts in Mary I that will benefit me in progressing in primary teaching? So that might be someone who's possibly thinking of the professional masters in education, maybe.
Yeah, okay, so there's no one subject that I would say is I mean, you don't undertake a degree program, I suppose. You undertake a degree program that interests you, and you undertake subjects that interest you. And there is no prerequisite. For example, if you're interested in studying at the professional masters after an undergraduate degree, there's no prerequisite. There's no one subject that guarantees you entry, or in the other way, that precludes you from entry. Obviously, off the top of my head, it's important to keep your level of Gaeilge and to keep up your proficiency in spoken Irish, because there's an Irish element to an interview and to access the program. But outside of that, if you're undertaking a degree that is of 4 years duration, make sure the subjects that you choose to study are those that interest you, and that it's something that you want to do for those 4 years, because we have all kinds of graduates entering the PME program, not only from the liberal arts, but we have people from a variety of different fields getting onto the program and coming onto the program, and all of their experiences valid. So my advice to you would be, if you're studying and if you're engaging in a program for a long period of time, of over 4 years, do what you're interested in, and because there is no subject that I would say that is in any way that is going to give you any kind of advantage.
Okay, thanks very much, John. We might put a couple of questions now to Sarah about the Bachelor of Education International. So Sarah, there's one question in here. A person is wondering, is there a lot more work involved in the B.Ed International than the Bachelor of Education?
Well, I guess that's a subjective enough question, but I mean, theoretically, the module or the credits are more or less aligned with the B.Ed and the B.Ed International. So it isn't that you're doing additional credits or additional modules, but you are doing distinctive modules, which of course, because they're different, they're not going to completely align with what the B.Ed what the B.Ed offers. So we can say that they're more or less comparable. During the study abroad experience, you will be taking the same amount of credits, of module credits, that you would be taking in Ireland, that B.Ed students would be taking. So there is a parallel there between the actual workloads.
Oh, okay, thanks very much, Sarah. We have another one in here for you as well. Do you still take specialisms and liberal arts in the Bachelor of Education International?
Yes, you do take specializations in liberal arts with the B.Ed International. Your educational specializations are in comparative education, so you don't choose from the suite of options that are open to educational specializations, but you do get to pick from art specializations. Yes.
Okay, and one more for you, Sarah. Would you have to be good with foreign languages to do the Bachelor of Education International?
It's not a prerequisite. We tend to have students who are very curious about languages and passionate about them, but because most or many of our study abroad opportunities are in English-speaking countries like the US, North America, and Australia, you're not precluded because there are plenty of English language speaking opportunities to study abroad.
Okay, final one then for you, Sarah, before I might switch over to Claire. So, Sarah, why would you choose the International Bachelor of Education over the normal B.Ed?
Okay, well, as I said during the talk, I think in B.Ed International students are particularly interested in the study abroad experience. They are interested in a broader perspective, maybe on education that looks at different approaches in different parts of the world. There is a curiosity around traveling, around potentially teaching abroad after the 4 years. And as I said, there's a particular curiosity and interest in supporting international students in the Irish context as well. So for students maybe like me who did the B.Ed, but my antenna were always sort of concerned with students from minority backgrounds and from linguistically diverse backgrounds, it's to satisfy that curiosity, as well as, of course, to have the very expanding experience that studying abroad entails, going abroad and figuring out how to navigate an international system without the usual supports in Ireland is something that, lots of students crave and really want to experience. So to have that built in as a mandatory component of the experience, I think really gives students that push to go out and to do the study abroad.
That's great, Sarah. Thanks very much. We have a couple of questions for Claire now. Claire, is there any chance to go abroad with the B.Ed in Education Psychology?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So at the moment, we're working on trying to create an opportunity for that. As it stands, the answer is no, because you're doing the B.Ed degree alongside the psychology degree, the way with the B.Ed International or the B.Ed program where you can take a semester abroad, that option isn't on the B.Ed psychology program at the moment. However, we're working on that so that we would hope for future cohorts that will come to pass. But in the present situation of the module, no. What we're looking at, though, is developing, besides taking a semester abroad, we're also looking at the idea of maybe having the option of a summer school where students might be able to go abroad for maybe 2 or 3 weeks at the end of one of their semesters to experience a college abroad, probably in America. New York is where we're currently looking, or Boston. And that again needs to be developed further. So these are things that are in the pipeline, but as it currently stands, that option isn't there, no.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. Another question, this person wants to know what modules should I choose for Leaving Cert if I want to do B.Ed in psychology? So that might be subjects possibly now rather than modules, but
the subjects for their Leaving Cert should they choose, is it?
Yeah, the question says what modules should I choose for Leaving Cert, but I presume that means subjects, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
well, you don't, there's no prerequisite modules that you need to have done except the entry requirements, which are akin to the B.Ed program. And John, you might be able to come in on that in terms of the baseline. You know, you need to have your Gaeilge to come in, and you need to be able to get your baseline certification in your Gaeilge to come into the B.Ed program, and it's the same for the B.Ed psychology program, but there's no specific subject that I would be saying. Now, I have to say, you know, some students do biology at third level or at Leaving Cert level, and when they come into first year psychology, they feel that, you know, helps them a little bit because you're learning a lot about the brain, you're learning about neurons, that kind of thing, so it can be helpful. But on a personal level, I didn't do biology for the Leaving Cert, and I wasn't disadvantaged coming in, so you're not required to have anything, but in terms of your Gaeilge, you have to get a certain baseline grade coming in, so you must have that. Do you want to comment on that, either Patrick or John?
I think that's okay, Claire. There, I think you've made that clear enough. Yeah.
Perfect.
One more for you, Claire.
Yeah, great.
This person here, they're interested in becoming an educational psychologist, but they're just wondering maybe if they didn't get the points for the B.Ed in education psychology and they just did the Bachelor of Education, could they possibly, you know, is there a route into the 3-year PhD maybe at a later stage?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in terms of the entry requirements to do educational psychology, and it's worth looking up the page on the MIC website. It's the Doctorate in Educational and Child Psychology program, and it will give you the entry requirements there for that. To do the Doctorate in Educational and Child Psychology program, in any institution, you must have a degree in psychology, and then thereafter you must have a minimum of 2 years applied experience with children or adolescents in an education or an applied setting. So if you have a strong interest in doing primary school teaching, I would say absolutely go and do your primary school teaching, but you will have to then go and do a degree in psychology thereafter. And there are options to do a degree in psychology online. There are some institutions that do online degrees in psychology. You can do them at a part-time basis as you're still doing your teaching. And there are some institutions where you can do an accelerated degree in psychology over a 2-year period, where you would do that full-time. So you could do your 4-year degree in psychology in B.Ed in Mary Immaculate College, for example, and then you could commence teaching. And then when you're teaching, you could decide, okay, I'm going to do a part-time degree in psychology over a number of years, or I'm going to teach for a number of years and then I'm going to take time out and I'm going to do, for example, an accelerated 2 years degree in psychology in another institution. And at that point in time, then you would have your degree in psychology, you would have teaching, and then you would be able to go and apply for the doctorate. But just to note that you don't have to have a degree in education to do the doctorate in educational and child psychology program. You must have a degree in psychology. So you could, if you absolutely are gung-ho on wanting to do educational psychology, you could choose, instead of doing primary school teaching, for example, you could choose to do the arts psychology program through Mary Immaculate College, because that would give you your psychology degree, and then you could go on and get applied experience thereafter. But you really need to, it's similar to the question that John was asked there about the arts subject, you know, what subject should you pick? I think when you're finishing your Leaving Cert, really ask yourself, you know, do I want to first and foremost be a primary school teacher? Because if your answer to that is yes, then I would say, you know, put down in order of preference, whichever it is, your B.Ed, your B.Ed Psychology, or B.Ed International. If you say, no, actually my main interest is in psychology, then in order of preference, you're either looking at your B.Ed Psychology or your BA with psychology. So I think that should make it clear, but I think definitely go on to the MIC website and look at the entry criteria for the Doctorate in Educational Psychology program, because that will give you clarity on that.
That's great, Claire. Thanks very much. A couple of questions now for John.
Yeah.
So, John, for the school placement part of the Bachelor of Education, we have a couple of questions here. They want to know Where you go for the placement, is it your own choice, or will you be allocated to certain schools for your school placement?
So yeah, so it's a mixture of both, depending on where you're from, really. In the most part, excuse me, in the most part, you search for your own schools across the latter half of the program. And as I said, in year 4, it will most certainly be in your local area and probably the school you went to yourself if that's what you want to do, but it is your choice. And in first year, there is the possibility that you would be placed by the college in a school around the in our region, and I'm saying in the region spans all of Munster and Galway and a little even beyond. So depending on where you live, we may choose a school for you, but that school will probably be in your local area as well, because as you can imagine, with 440 students roughly in every year, Limerick wouldn't be able to cope with that quantity. So will you be at home for school placement? Yes, you will. Most likely, if you're, for example, from Galway or from Cork or from Kerry or, any of those kind of regions, you will probably engage in most of your placements in those regions, in some schools that we'll source and in some schools that you'll source yourself.
That's great, John, thanks. Another question in there, John, as well, about the Gaeltacht placement, what exactly it involves.
So yeah, so this it's again, this is a teaching council requirement. So the degree is the degree is ratified by the teaching council as one of the teacher education programs in Ireland. And to gain qualification, there are 2 Gaeltacht placements within the program of 2 weeks duration each. They're funded by the DES, and normally they happen in first year and in third year. So in first year, at the end of your first year in May, June, and in third year between your autumn semester and your spring semester. So they're in 4 weeks in total, 2 2-week blocks.
Thanks very much, John. We have a couple of questions on this, John, wondering how many places are available on the Bachelor of Education program each year. Yeah,
so normally we take in around 4, it varies, 420 to 440, depending on different factors every year, but normally it's in or around that region, 420 to 440. So in total at the moment we would have about 1,600 odd more students across the 4 years on campus.
Okay, and another person wants to know if they got accepted on the Bachelor of Education course, how many hours would you have on campus per day, I suppose, or per week? This is in a normal non-COVID situation, obviously.
So normally you can expect in and around 27 would be the max. As I said, it's a busy program because it's a professional qualification. Obviously, it changes on a year-to-year basis depending on if you have placement, for example, you wouldn't have lectures, you'd be out in schools a lot. So it varies, but you can expect to be on campus, from Monday to Friday, and between 25, 27 hours is a good estimate.
Great. And one last one for you, John. Are there restricted number of places available to go abroad on the Bachelor of Education, or I suppose can anyone that wants to go abroad?
Yeah, so normally in any given normal year, we have agreements across Europe in the Erasmus program. Not everybody is interested, and some people are interested and some people aren't. And on a normal year, circa 30 students go abroad across European destinations, but even beyond. Students, we have had students in Australia, we have had students in the United States, and that happens in the first semester of year 3. So give or take 30 students would indicate and that they want to engage in study abroad.
That's great, John. Thanks a million. We might go back to Sarah now for a couple of questions. So Sarah, we have a question here. This person wants to know, does the Bachelor of Education International qualify you for teaching in Gaelscoileanna?
Yes, it does. I mean, like the Bachelor of Education, you're fully qualified to teach in Gaelscoileanna. Yeah, absolutely.
And we have another one, a very specific place this person wants to go. They want to know, is there international teaching? Is there placement available in Edmonton in Canada?
That is something that I don't know off the top of my head, but there is a list of all of our partnerships on the Mary Immaculate College website under Study Abroad. So if that person wants to do a simple check of where can I study abroad, they should be able to see that. If Edmonton isn't listed there, it is a good idea, or it's good to bear in mind that the international office is very dynamic in its response to students. So there is the potential for you to go and explain that you've got a particular interest in studying in a particular place like in Canada or Edmonton, and they'd be very happy to reach out and see if it would be possible to create a memorandum of understanding with that university. So that has happened in the past, and so you should think about the list of our current partnerships as a living, organic document that is updated and changed all of the time. So plenty of flexibility there to look into those possibilities.
That's great, Sarah. One more. This person wants to know, in the Bachelor of Education International, what is involved in the semester abroad? Is it just study, or is there work placement also?
Yeah, so generally speaking, it is study. So you're going to an international university and you're going to be taking modules that are similar to the modules that B.Ed students will be taking in third year in Ireland. So what we would do is look at the potential location that you would like to go to. We'd evaluate the modules that they're offering at the time that you're going, and we'd sign you up for those modules. So it is very much a study abroad. Now, we do have some partnerships, particularly in the US and Australia, that facilitate you going to educational settings like local schools and observing how teaching is approached in those settings. So again, in year 2, we would walk you through those different options and make you aware of them. But generally speaking, the study abroad experience is you studying modules in teacher education in an international context.
And one final one then for you, Sarah. This person wants to know, are the points for the Bachelor of Education International course and the normal Bachelor of Education course the same?
No, they're not the same. I believe that the B.Ed International was higher this year. It's a much smaller course and there aren't the same availability. It's limited to around 15 students, so the points do tend to be higher.
Yeah, and there's separate CAO codes as well, so they're separate programs. Just one final one for you, Sarah. This person wants to know, do you still do both GWAED type placements if you choose the international option?
Yes, absolutely.
That's great, thanks very much. So I might just go over to Claire now. We have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So Claire, this person wants to know, just in a normal year, how many hours on campus would you have if you're a student on the B.Ed in Education Psychology?
Okay, well, I think comparable to what Dr. John O'Shea just said there in terms of the B.Ed programme, it's similar. Your weekly hours are roughly kind of high 20s, so 26 plus hours per week. So you are scheduled Monday to Friday to be on campus. It's a full-time honours degree programme. You potentially, some semesters may have slightly more hours than the B.Ed students, but when I say slightly, I'm talking 1 or 2, 3 maybe max extra per week than the B.Ed students, because it balances out. As I say, the B.Ed component of the programme isn't a carbon copy of that of the B.Ed programme, so as a result, there are some variations and that balances out with hours, but it's a full-time programme Monday to Friday and you're just shy of the 30 hours per week.
Okay, we have another one then. This person wants to know, does doing the B.Ed Education Psychology program give you any advantages when it comes to working in a school, and can it help you in your day-to-day work life in ways that studying the normal Bachelor of Education cannot?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Well, you know, it's worth thinking about. You're in a cohort of 40 students, and so it's a smaller group. And when you go to apply for a job in Ireland to a principal, you know, there's only maybe 39 other students in Ireland with a comparable CV to you that's highlighting, I've done a B.Ed degree, but I've also done a psychology degree. So your CV may, you know, stand out for that reason. I guess also if you think about what psychology is, it's the study of people's behavior. So during that learning, you're thinking about and learning about areas like special education. You're looking at how children learn, how children develop. You're looking at social psychology, so social groups. So there's a lot of factors and aspects of the psychology degree that really complement your education degree as well. So when you go for interview, absolutely you can sell yourself on, yes, I've got my B.Ed teaching degree, but I've also done a degree in psychology, and this helps me to understand children in areas such as, and you can list them off. And then also, I guess, thinking about the undergraduate dissertation in psychology, some students will choose a dissertation that maybe highlights their interest in a special area. So it could be in special education, or it could be in learning or cognition. And that can often be used as a selling point at an interview as well. So it all depends, I guess, on how you frame your psychology degree. But as I say, both degrees definitely complement each other, and that can then, you know, be a useful springboard for looking at jobs.
And final one for you then, Claire. This is from someone, I suppose, they're looking to do a PhD in education and psychology. I presume maybe that means to become an education psychologist. They want to know, would a master's degree be necessary, and what characteristics are looked upon favourably for acceptance onto that PhD programme?
Yeah, so it's again similar to the last question. It's worth looking at the admission criteria on the Doctorate in Educational and Child Psychology programme, which is a full-time 3-year postgraduate programme, which qualifies you to become an educational psychologist. You don't need a master's, so it's not a prerequisite that you have a master's. However, you know, there's a huge amount of applicants on an annual basis, and we roughly have about 10 places every year. So on when it comes to accepting candidates, obviously your academics from undergraduate level right up will be taken on board. So for those who have done a master's, obviously we'll give them an advantage in that area. But there are other areas that we look at beyond just your academics, so your experience, your understanding of research, etc., etc. So you don't need a master's degree to come on or to apply for the doctorate program. So yeah, you don't have to have that. Was there a second part to that question, Patrick? Sorry.
I think I forgot that. I think
you
covered it all anyway there, Claire.
Yeah, I just want to make one point, if you don't mind, Patrick. When the person asked about the study abroad option, and as I said, that option to spend a semester abroad isn't on the programme. Just to note though that in my overview of the B.Ed Psychology programme, I did highlight that students do a 2-week placement, which is called your applied placement, which is the alternative placement where we look at applying psychology in educational settings. And I talked about maybe special schools or special classes, etc. We have had some students on the B.Ed Psychology programme that for that 2-week period go abroad and look at, you know, a different educational setting. So we have had students who have gone to America or different areas for that. So that might just give you an option if you feel you'd love some bit of an international experience over your 4 years, but as it currently stands, you can't do a semester abroad.
And one more, Claire, this person wants to know, are your job prospects better if you have a degree in the B.Ed in Education and Psychology than the regular Bachelor of Education?
Yeah, I think I've kind of addressed that in the last answer, in the idea of, I guess it's a higher point course to get into, and then you come out at the end of it with 2 degrees. So you're selling yourself on that, and in your interview, you're selling yourself on the idea that, yes, I have my teaching degree, but I also have a psychology degree. But in the end of the day, when you go to apply for a teaching job, you are in an interview scenario the same as anyone else. So it's about how you frame how your learning has gone. Across all of our programs, programs, the B.Ed, the B.Ed International and the B.Ed Psychology program, we really foster students' learning, and we really support students to do their best and to come out with a really, really strong degree. And I think John and Sarah will be able to attest to this, that any of our graduates of the program, you know, are really sought after, because all three programs are extremely strong, and our graduates of the program really go on to sell themselves both in their CVs and in interviews because of the merit that goes behind these programs and the reputation that is there for the programs. So I think, you know, when you're filling out your CAO form, my biggest advice would be really think about your order of preference. You know, which do you want first? Which would you really want in an ideal world if points weren't an issue? And put those down in your order of preference. And thereafter, you know, the CAO points will dictate. But all three programs are really excellent programs. And from my own point of view with the B.Ed Psychology program, what you're getting in addition, you know, to the other programs is you're getting that degree in psychology, which then opens up avenues in that field should you so wish to pursue them. And if you don't wish to pursue them, the psychology aspect will complement the education that you've done. I hope that answers it.
That's great, Claire. I might pass over to John now. I have a couple
Brilliant,
more
yeah.
for him. John, this person is wondering, at what level are subjects like Maths, Irish and English taught at on the Bachelor of Education?
Yeah, so it's not, that's a good question. It's not it's the teaching of the subjects. So for example, it's if you were landed in a junior infant classroom tomorrow morning and you had to explore, you know, the composition of the number 5, for example, it's how do I explore that? So it's not your knowledge of the subject area, it's your knowledge of, or the knowledge of method, how to teach a particular subject area. Okay, so I suppose there's your learning of a particular subject. It's not that it stops, but you more delve into the exploration of the best methods, the approaches, the resources, etc., to teach the curriculum. So it's a different type of understanding, I suppose.
That's great. Another question then, they want to know, is there extra support in Irish if needed? So if someone maybe is struggling with the Irish part of the programme.
Okay, so there's obviously an entry requirement at H4, you might correct me, Patrick, if I'm wrong, in terms of Gaeilge. Yeah. And within the programme, there's a variety of different types of support if it's necessary, and there to support you. But with that entry, we would presume that your level of Gaeilge is quite good, and it's, I suppose, particularly what's important is your ability to engage in conversational situations through Gaeilge. But there's a language component to the program designed to support you in furthering your ability in conversational Irish. That's there together with Múna na Gaeilge, so it's together with the teaching of the subject. So you've got both streams within the program, so that when you qualify, you should be very adept at exploring the language in primary school.
Thanks, John. Another question, this person wants to know, why would you do a postgraduate program after the Bachelor of Education?
I presume the PME is the intention there. I suppose for anyone that's unsure right now, and that doesn't know that they want to commit themselves or that they want to begin a career in teaching and is unsure. And I suppose for anyone who's unsure, there are avenues into primary teaching outside of the B.Ed, outside of, you know, going straight onto that from second level. And it's the PME program that we offer, obviously, and that other colleges offer. So if you're unsure right now, I suppose it would be important for you to think, you know, or to know that there are options later on. Okay, there is the PME program, which is a 2-year duration that you can, you know, apply to enter. If at this point in time, if you think that the primary teaching may not be for you, so just be assured there is an avenue there later on, should you wish.
Yeah, thanks, John. Just a good point, because we have a number of people asking, you know, about doing different undergraduate degrees. So for that 2-year PME program, the entry requirement is as long as you have a level 8 degree. And you need to
do what you're interested in. Do what you're interested in. Don't. Yeah. Any program from across the whole, the whole third level sector in Ireland, a level 8 degree is all that's required. Obviously you're going to get at leaving cert level, you'll have that in the bag anyway, but do what you're interested in, particularly if you're going to commit yourself to it for 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good point from John there. One more, John. This person wants to know what's involved in the specialism in a liberal arts subject.
So if you choose, for example, so there's two routes. You can do a specialism in education or in the liberal arts. So if you choose education, if I want, to further my knowledge in SEN or music education or maths education or PE and so on, so that's that avenue there. If you're currently a student of, for example, music at second level, and it's a passion of yours, you can continue that within the liberal arts level, or Gaeilge, or mathematics, or geography and so on. So it's down to what you would prefer to do and your interests, and that's what we've tried to build into the program, something to tailor the degree to your particular interests and talents that you might have and that you might want to further.
Thanks, John. And just another follow-up to what we were just talking about there about the PME, John. Ashling wants to know which would be best suited for the PME, early childhood education, or the arts degree, which is the most popular choice. I suppose it's really a matter of...
Ashling, I would say to you, neither, Ashling. Okay. The PME, the entry route into the PME is, having the bag a level 8 undergraduate degree and come to the interview. And so obviously, you'll do an interview like everyone else would do an interview, but it's your interest and your in the program at that stage that's important, and why you've come to it. Will you know the answers to some education questions if you did an education degree? Yes, you will, but that's not going to stop. That's not a barrier to entry. So, 4 years is a long time, and do what you're interested in right now in whatever institution you want to do it, and that. People, as I said before, people have come to the PE program from law backgrounds, from education backgrounds, from ECE backgrounds, but from medical backgrounds, from engineering backgrounds, from every type of background, and just, I suppose, do what you're interested in and do what excites you. That would be very important. Yeah,
good points there, John. Another question then, it's for someone who's going abroad in the Bachelor of Education in third year. Just want to know, are there any grants or funding available?
Yeah, so there are, and particularly Erasmus, as would be the primary one for across Europe, and we would have arrangements where there would be no, beyond Erasmus, we'd have no fee arrangements in place. Obviously, there would, your living expenses that you would have here are similar, but for the B.Ed program, Erasmus situations, grants are available, etc., across Europe to go to different places. So, I suppose you could compare it to being in Ireland and being at home, and being abroad. There's nothing that if you were moving to Limerick, for example, to engage with the B.Ed program, there's nothing to say. There are, flights, obviously, and there's nothing prohibitively expensive, and we also have support in place as well.
Yeah, and just another one, John, for the B.Ed, is there anything additional that has to be done before primary teaching, or are you qualified straight after?
You're immediately qualified to begin work in a primary school in a permanent capacity, if that, if the job is available and if you get it, or in any type of capacity, temporary and so on. What does happen though is there is an induction process, and the induction process is, it's a process that every newly qualified teacher goes through, and it's more supportive than any other way to help the NQT become a full member of the profession. But in terms of getting on the salary scale and getting a job, etc., immediately upon graduation, you are entitled to that.
And just another one, John, are you qualified to teach abroad, let's say in somewhere like Australia after the B.Ed? And if not, what would you have to undertake to be qualified to teach abroad?
Yeah, so like you can imagine someone coming to Ireland to teach in a primary school. That's obviously very difficult because of the language requirement. So different countries will have different requirements. Some countries recognise our degree programs as appropriate for teaching in their jurisdiction. So, as for example, the UK, the United Arab Emirates, for example, and across the European English language schools and so on. You know, our graduates immediately can move there without greater difficulty. But different jurisdictions obviously have different requirements in terms of what you need to have to teach in those jurisdictions, and so it doesn't automatically qualify you to teach anywhere. And also you'd have visa requirements and so on that are outside of the programs that are there. But there are places that you can go and that you can get a job immediately. And as I said, such locations that I've mentioned there a minute ago.
Thanks very much, John. We might just go to Claire again. We just have a couple of more questions for her. So Claire, this person wants to know, do the B.Ed and Psych students pick electives such as music, PE, geography, etc., like the B.Ed students do?
Yeah, really good question. No, so the B.Ed psychology students don't have the opportunity to pick electives. As I said, every aspect of the B.Ed part of the B.Ed psychology program isn't comparable to the mainstream B.Ed program. So the elective option isn't there, and the reason for that is because they're undertaking core modules as well as undertaking psychology modules. So there isn't, I suppose, space to take those electives. There is an elective in psychology that the B.Ed psychology students choose in fourth year. So as I said before, like abnormal psychology, the psychology of motivation, health psychology, and they choose one of those. But no, that option to have a specialism, for example, in a certain area like is on the B.Ed program, that option isn't there for our B.Ed psychology programs. I guess if you were to think about what their specialism is, for example, it's that they come out with a degree in psychology. So we don't then go on to do a specialism within education.
Thanks, Claire. And we've just another one then.
Yeah.
This person was wondering, if the B.Ed in Psych becomes too intense, is there an option to revert back to the Bachelor of Education on its own?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have had situations, very few to be honest, but we've had one or two students over the years who start the B.Ed in psychology program, and for whatever reason, be it that they're just not interested in psychology or whatever happens, they decide, you know, that they would prefer to transfer into the B.Ed program, and we allow that to happen. If there is space within the program, we allow that to happen, and in general, you know, we can accommodate that. Obviously, the reverse can't happen, that if you start the B.Ed program and then you decide you want to change into the B.Ed psychology program, that can't happen because, you know, there's a very limited number of places on that, and it goes to the CAO. So it's not a definite that you can move from the B.Ed psychology to the B.Ed, but as it stands, if we have had a student who for whatever reason is, you know, unhappy on the program, we would do our best to facilitate that and ensure that, you know, they are allowed to engage in the B.Ed program should the space be available. But I think that is the prerequisite, you know, should the space be available, they can move. Yeah.
Okay, and one more, Claire, I think you kind of covered this a bit already, but this person wants to know, do the B.Ed and Psych students study more modules than the B.Ed students?
Ever so slightly, yes, in that the number of credits on the B.Ed psychology program is higher than on the B.Ed program, and that's because they are doing a degree in psychology, and so that means that the credits on the program get pushed up that little bit higher. So yes, there are some more modules that they do, because bear in mind you're doing that dual degree program, and both programs have to be accredited by the governing bodies, so by the Teaching Council of Ireland and by the Psychological Society of Ireland. But I think, as I've said before, and I think it's worth reiterating, students who undertake the program would say that it is a challenging program, but you know that it is still doable, and you know you still get your your breaks like the B.Ed program and the B.Ed International, in terms of, you know, you get your period of time off after each semester, you get your summer breaks, and when you're on campus, all of our programs are busy, because in the end of the day you're going to be qualified, and you'll have a professional qualification at the end of all three programs we're presenting tonight. So as a result, yes, they're demanding, but students are supported, and there are plenty of supports within the college, be it academic supports, be it, you know, more social supports, emotional supports. We have counselling within the college. We have chaplaincy. We have many different facets within our college to support the holistic development of our students. So yes, it is busier at times for students than on the B.Ed programme, but students are looked after, and all programme leaders, be it Dr. John O'Shea, Sarah O'Brien or myself, you know, we look out for the students, and students can liaise with us should the need arise, and also all those other support services that I just talked about there.
Thanks very much, Claire. And one final one then. This person wants to know, when studying this programme, what is the psychology to primary teaching ratio? So, and is there a chance to decide between the two, or are they intertwined? So I presume that means between education and psychology, maybe how much you give on each.
Yeah, so in terms of credits, it's 50-50. So 50% of the credits go to education modules and 50% of the credits go to psychology modules. Now, if you're to look at it on paper, in semesters, it can look like you're doing far more education, because some of our education modules are, and you don't need to worry about this, but they're, you know, 3 credit modules, while some of our psychology modules would be 6 credit. So they would be bigger psychology modules, for example. So you might be doing more education modules, but they're worth less credits, and you might be doing fewer psychology modules, but they're bigger modules, and in terms of credits, they're worth more. But as the program progresses, then particularly 4th year, the weighting kind of shifts a bit in terms of your hours, and you end up in 4th year in particular doing more psychology modules than education. But overall, when you look at the programme, it's a 50-50 split, and it has to be 50-50 in terms of the accreditation process, in terms of the Teaching Council saying yes, you get your degree, and the Psychological Society of Ireland saying yes, you get your degree. And it's worth going onto the website. You can see the breakdown of each semester and what modules are covered each semester on the education component of the programme and on the psychology component. But they do complement each other in terms of your learning.
Thanks very much, Claire. I'm afraid time has come against us, but we have a number of questions there, similar questions just about the PME. So I suppose for anyone that is interested in pursuing that option in the future, it's a 2-year master's for people who already have a level 8 degree and who want to become a primary school teacher. So if you just Google Professional Masters of Education at Mary Immaculate College, you can get all the details there, and particularly the entry requirements. So as John has already said, you just need your level 8 degree and a 2-2 grade in it. The entry requirements, as they currently stand, you need a H4 in Irish, and for English and Maths, it's an O4 at ordinary level or a H7 at higher level. So if you get through that, there's an oral Irish interview called a TEG exam, and there's also an interview in English as well, and that's how applicants to the programme, that's how the process is, that's how it's decided. So maybe check that out over the next day or two if you want to just think about your other options as well. So thanks very much to Claire, to Sarah and to John for giving up their time this evening. The next session in this series will be tomorrow night at 5 p.m, where we will be looking at the BA in Early Childhood Care and Education with Lisa O'Sullivan. So if you want to tune in then and ask any questions, please do so. Please remember that this session will be recorded, and we will have it up on the Mary Immaculate College website in the next day or two. So if you do want to check it out again, just go to our website, micopenday.ie. So thanks again everyone for tuning in this evening, and we just enjoy the rest of your evening.